Okay, so it's 5:05. I'm going to go ahead and get started now. Sound good? Tara, I think, hopefully. Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, thank you guys for being here. I know some of you are going to be watching this live virtually. Many of you will be catching this on YouTube a little bit later, but my name is Jennifer Daniels. I will be your presenter today. And on behalf of AmeriCorps, first, I would just like to say thank you for having me. This is such an important time for us to be talking about how to manage your well-being and taking care of yourself. I know a lot of you right now with the changes in our work conditions, we have new responsibilities, we're working in new environments, and that is an increased opportunity for us to be dealing with stress. So we're going to talk about all of that today, managing your well-being, all of those things included on how we can take better care of ourselves during this time. So just as a little quick overview to give you guys a heads up on what we're going to be speaking about today. What we're going to do first is really define what resiliency is and what well-being means for you and for you as an individual, not only as a professional, but as an individual managing all the different things that come with your life, whether it is your professional responsibilities, but also just managing your own regular life with your family, maybe it's your roommates, whatever, maybe it's just yourself. How can we define our resiliency and look at what do we mean when we're talking about well-being? One of the things that we're also going to go into today is really talking about COVID-19 and how that's impacted our lives, our work lives and our personal lives, and talk a little bit about how some of that stress can show up in our work. We'll then go into how we can start taking steps now to really recognize when we're experiencing burnout and acute stress. We'll talk about what some of those signs are, how to identify them, and then we'll go into the specific ways that we can tackle some of those difficult emotions and some of those hard feelings that we may be dealing with while we're going through these different work environment and circumstances. Next, we'll move into what does self-care look like? We'll talk about self-care in our personal lives and our work lives and how to really separate that because both require specific attention in making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And then we'll go ahead and end things with overall stress management and what we can be doing again to really manage our stress. And we'll finish with the Q&A. If there's any concerns or questions that people may have, you can go ahead and type that into the chat box and I'll be sure to answer and address those things at the very end. But with no further waiting, we'll go ahead and jump right into the presentation. So the first thing that we're going to do here, and what I will do as well, guys, is I will be checking the chat box periodically just to make sure that there's no questions or pressing concerns as we go through. But again, we'll also have an opportunity at the end for you guys to ask any questions that you may have so that I can give you guys some answers on that. So the first things first is talking about, well, what is resiliency, right? And this is going to be kind of our starting point in tackling some of these difficult things that we may be experiencing in our jobs and in the broader society. And so when we talk about resiliency, we're saying that this is the process of being able to really adapt well in the face of diversity or adversity. We can say both, right? And then being able to bounce back from difficult experiences. And so if you've overcome anything in your life, if you've had any type of hardship that you've been able to move past, you have exhibited resiliency. And so that leads us to this next question. Can I be resilient? Am I resilient? And the answer to that is yes. Resiliency is for everyone and something that we can all take part in and practice. Now, resiliency may come more natural to others, but for most of us, resiliency is not always something that's innate. It's not always something that we're just born with and we automatically know how to overcome hardships. It can take a lot of practice and persistence over time. That's how we learn to become resilient, is dealing with issues day in and day out, dealing with our hardships day in and day out, and getting better at being able to really overcome some of these experiences. Even people that you may look at people, and I know in in the age of social media, where we see people's lives, and we're looking at Facebook, and we're looking at Instagram, or whatever type of social media that you use. And oftentimes we can look at people and say, wow, they look like they never struggle at all, or everything is so easy in their life, right? One, that's smoke and mirrors, right? No one has it all together. And even people who are the best self-help gurus are going to struggle with resiliency. And so I say that to really normalize it, and for you guys to not always think that the grass is greener on the other side, and that there's people out there who are so perfect with how they deal with hardship. We're all struggling, and especially now in this time of COVID, which we're going to talk about in a short moment, that has definitely been something that's impacted a lot of us in being able to just deal with our every day-to-day life circumstances, and work particularly. And so when we talk about how do we, there we go, hoping I wasn't having a computer malfunction. Welcome to COVID life and doing Zoom technology, everything, but we're good. My computer did not freeze. So how to build your resilience. And so one of these things that I'm encouraging you all to think about, in how do I overcome these hardships? Again, understanding that when we're thinking about what we're dealing with in our regular day-to-day life, and I know a lot of you in AmeriCorps, a lot of you are or may be dealing with really tough work situations, working with tough clients or citizens, or having a really demanding job, right? And so those are things that take a toll on us every single day. But when we add in these other factors that are going on in life right now, so right, we have a lot of social unrest with the racial injustice that's been happening in our country. We have COVID on top of that. And then I have a difficult job. And then I work on a tough team. And then it's difficult managing my kids and working with them from home, and having to be a teacher and a parent and also a worker and a maid, and all of those things wrapped into one. It's very, very easy to get stuck in the moment. And so one of the first things that you can do to help start building that resilience is thinking about a purpose, or a plan, or something that's meaningful, that's bigger than yourself, right? What is your why? What is your motivation for why you're doing what you're doing? What gets you to wake up every day and show up to work? Is it for your family? Is it for your children? Is it for your community? Is it for your clients? Whatever that bigger picture is, whatever is driving you, focus on that bigger picture, focus on that bigger purpose as to why you're doing what you do. Sometimes that can help us step outside of the immediate moment, right? And what's happening here and now, and what's so intense for us right in this moment, and to see something broader and bigger than what we're experiencing right here on the ground. The next piece in that, and building your resilience, is not allowing mistakes or hardships to define you. No hard moment lasts forever, okay? And so now I understand that, especially with this COVID, I mean, I feel like I've been quarantining for the last 6 months, going on 7 years, okay? So I understand how we can all feel with COVID taking forever, and we're like, gosh, it feels like we've been doing this forever, right? Or maybe you're having something going on at work, and in this moment, that's the only thing that you can focus on, is how you made this mistake, or how you're dealing with this difficult client, or how you're dealing with even this difficult supervisor. No hard moment lasts forever, and you're not defined by those moments, right? So again, taking it back up to that first point, being able to think broader and bigger about what are these motivations, and understanding that these moments that we're going through are exactly that, just moments. Choosing to be flexible and really grow from these hardships. And so I have a mentor that says to me often, right, that nothing great comes from being in your comfort zone, right? When we're talking about growing, and when we're talking about learning, or getting better at our jobs, or just getting better as a human being, right? Looking at self-growth, it's going to require some flexibility, right? And we have to know that in order for us to elevate to the next level of who we are, or to get better at whatever it is that we're doing, is that we're going to grow from some of those hard points, right? If everything was easy, what would ever be the motivation for us to push ourselves to do better, right? So hardships really build character. Hardships can make you better, not only as an employee, but as an individual. The next piece in how we really start to build that resilience is affirming who we are and the skills that we bring to the table. right? And again, kind of going back to those moments when things can be really hard, when we go through these hardships, right? And everything is kind of crumbling around us, or our jobs are really intense, right? And it's picking up. It can be really hard to focus on the things that we do really well, right? Or what got us to these experiences or these jobs in AmeriCorps, these opportunities for us to be able to learn and to bring these skill sets that we have, and really making our communities better, and doing great jobs with our work, but also doing great jobs in our homes and with our families and our friends. Remembering, again, affirming that even through hard moments, you are still good enough. You are doing well enough, and there's a reason why you are where you are, right? So really being able to give that back to yourself in those moments that we can deal with stress and hardships within our entire life. The next point that we'll talk about here is really taking care of yourself emotionally and physically. I won't spend all my time here because we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the presentation in terms of taking care of our mental health, taking care of our bodies physically, but all of that is a part of your resilience. The next thing that we can do here is taking a moment to recognize past hardships you've overcome, right? And we can, again, we lose sight of that. When we go through the next hard moment, sometimes we forget about everything that we overcame to be at the present spot that we're at right now, right? And so think about all the years of your life. Think about all of the hardships that you've gone through. If you're still standing here, if you're watching this video, if you're on YouTube, if you're in this session right now, there have been things that you have dealt with that have been difficult in your life, but you're here and you've been able to overcome them. And so taking that same energy, right? What was it that got you through those hard moments? How did you overcome that hardship or that difficult work situation or that difficult home life, all of it intertwining together? And then reminding yourself that this time is no different. Those same skills, the same grit, the same faith, whatever it may be. And I say faith for whoever. Your faith can really be anything, whether you're someone who's spiritual or whether you just believe in potato chips. I don't care, right? You can believe in whatever you want to believe in. But my point is, whatever it is that you used to help you get through a hard moment, those are the same things that are going to help you get through this moment now. So reminding yourselves of that when you go through hardships. If you're still here and still standing, acknowledging that as a win. And this is really important for resilience, because I feel like what can happen is we always can hang our hat on the big wins, right? We're always focused on, well, how do I only if I got the promotion, or when I got the job, or when I received recognition. Those are the only times that I'm acknowledging that I did something well. But often I challenge you guys to think about this a little bit differently. If you are still showing up every day, if you are still present every day, even within your jobs, that is enough to acknowledge that you've been able to overcome something, right? So giving yourself more credit and acknowledging even those small wins in what we're doing. And the last piece in this, and how we're really going to build this resiliency, is remembering that resiliency is an ongoing process, okay? We're not going to just say, okay, you know what, I'm resilient today and I'm never going to have to be resilient for the rest of my life. Or I got over this hardship today and that's it, right? I've conquered self-development. Being resilient and growing and being able to deal with the twists and turns of life, that's going to be a continual thing. I know that's kind of depressing actually when you say it that way, like, wow, we're never going to end this. But I don't mean it like that. I'm saying that at the end of the day, once we overcome something, or once we achieve a new level or a new place of growth, there's always going to be more to do. So really just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable at times, and knowing that resiliency is something that you will continually work on and practice on as you move through in your life. I'm going to take a quick moment just to check the chat to make sure that there's not any questions or concerns. And that's a really great question. So someone asked here, what's the best way to remember overcoming hardships without living in the past, right? And so that's actually a really great question. And so part of this first, when we're thinking about how do I think about what I've overcome, is not harboring on the negative or what someone did to you or the negative event that you were a part of or the boss that used to treat you horribly, right? It's so easy to get sucked back in to that negative space where we're only just focusing on the negative experience. But instead, switch that lens to say, okay, instead of just focusing on that horrible boss I had or that really tough client that I used to work with, thinking about how I managed that really hard boss or how I managed that really tough client. What were the things that I did to overcome that? Almost kind of being proud of who you are and the way that you've been able to deal with adversity and diversity in your life. So that's the first point. And then the second question here that someone has is, what's the best way to track successes? And that's also a great question. And that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. And I'll give a quick little plug here. And one of the ways that I encourage, for me, myself as a social worker, is encouraging people to do some type of journaling activity, right? Now, I want you to think about journaling. Again, we'll speak on this a little bit later in the presentation, but I want you to think about journaling, not just as old school diary, let me open my diary and sit in the corner of my room and write things down. Journaling can be something as small as grabbing a sticky note, right? Those little sticky notes that we have everywhere that we place on things. And when you accomplish a task or you do something that you're proud of, writing that little thing that you're proud of or that encouragement piece that you have and putting that sticky right there on your computer or right there on the wall where you see it every day when you come down and sit at your desk, right? These moments where you can remind yourself of, wow, I did that, right? That's something that I overcame, and that's something that I'm proud of in myself. Giving yourselves those reminders, that self-affirmation. And so again, we'll expand on this a little bit later, and those are great questions. Keep them coming as we go. So now we'll move into the next slide. Now, what do we mean when we say well-being? So we're speaking first about the resiliency, right? And so we're saying the resiliency is the ability to be able to bounce back from some of these hardships. But now, what do we mean when we're saying well-being? How do we take care of my well-being? All of these different bullets that you see here, your well-being is your physical health, your emotional and mental health, your spirituality, if you're someone who's spiritual, your financial health, your environment, your occupation, right? Where are you working? How does that drive you? And even your social, right? The way that you engage with your family and friends. All of these things working together, the state of being comfortable, healthy, and happy, and all of these different dimensions that make us who we are is how we're talking about well-being, right? So let's go a little bit deeper into this as we talk about well-being. Now, what's important to understand, right, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, is that we've already, before COVID happened, before all of the social unrest started really taking place, we were already managing our own stress and demands of our personal life and of our work life. Now you throw a little bit of COVID into that, okay? And you throw a little bit of social unrest into that. Now we're having all of these different ways that we are being intensified with those same emotions that we already had before COVID even started, right? Now, when we think about the impacts of just COVID alone, when this really started picking up and changing the way that we worked and we were engaging with our jobs back in March, for most of us is when we really started to see a turn. You're going to see layered impacts on the way that we're affected. Our work life, our home life, our social life, all being impacted, okay? And now when we move a little bit further and what people are seeing and how we deal with trauma. Again, a lot of you who are a part of AmeriCorps, I'm sure you're very well aware of what trauma means and understanding that trauma is a huge continuum of different experiences that we can have in our life, right? Trauma can be anything from dealing with any type of physical or emotional abuse to having a loss of life, or loss of normalcy and connection, loss of identity, purpose, illness, death, and even economic loss. All of these things here. Think about how COVID has impacted your life, from the way that we work, for many of us, how we've been getting paid, right? So a lot of us may not have had the privilege to have the same kind of paychecks, the economic loss that we are accustomed to with COVID. Many of us have had family members who've become sick, friends who've become sick from COVID, really just losing our direction in things, right? Not being able to connect to family and friends or even do our jobs the same way. Everything changed when we experienced COVID. And I think one thing that a lot of us don't realize is how this is really impacting our lives in a multitude of ways. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we can start recognizing some of these signs that I may be dealing with some stress or dealing with some burnout. Now, again, as I'm speaking about this, I want you guys to understand that when I'm speaking of, I'm talking about burnout, I'm talking about acute stress. You may have already been experiencing some of these signs well before our work life started changing back earlier in the year, earlier in 2020, okay? This circumstances that we're in now is only exacerbating what we've been experiencing. And so the first thing that we have to do in managing our well-being and managing our stress and being resilient is first starting with this self-awareness, right? You have to take a look within, look at yourself and see what am I experiencing here? We're going to get into some of these signs in a short moment. And so you have to take care of yourself before you attempt to care for others. And I'm sure many of you have heard this phrase before. You cannot pour from an empty cup or an empty glass, right? And so pouring into yourself first is that self-care, taking care of yourself, being aware of what you're dealing with emotionally and physically, and saying, before I can give my best service or care to others, I have to give that to myself first. We cannot ignore our feelings. Early intervention is best. And so and part of this, and I want to kind of give a disclaimer first in saying that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in these next several slides are things that you can start doing now to mitigate or take away some of the effects that we've been feeling with this acute stress and burnout. Now, by all means, I am not saying do not go to your doctor, okay? If you know your body best, you know your mind best, and if you are struggling with any of these things in a way that feels unmanageable, seek professional help. I am not a medical doctor, okay? So I cannot diagnose you, but I can say for those of you who feel like, let me try some of these things on my own first and see what I can manage on my own to see if they get better before I seek additional intervention. That's what we're going to be talking about here. So some of these signs of acute stress or burnout. First is going to be fatigue and poor frustration tolerance, right? Now, I want you to think about this, not just our everyday, oh, I'm tired from a long week of working. I'm talking you're more tired than you normally are, right? So in your normal job, Monday through Friday, you might not start feeling a little exhausted from the week, maybe until about maybe Thursday evening or maybe Friday morning when you're like, okay, I'm ready for the weekend or whatever your weekend is. Some of you might have untraditional weekends. And now that's normal. But if you say, okay, I normally don't start getting exhausted until Friday, but here we are at Tuesday and I feel like I am not rested and I feel exhausted and my body's tired, that's a sign that you could be dealing with some acute stress or burnout. And if you're more frustrated than you usually are, right? Little things that wouldn't normally bother you are all of a sudden big things that are getting under your skin, right? And you're losing your patience, whether it's at home, right? With our kids or with our family members or with our partners, right? Or at work where we normally wouldn't let those small things or those things that don't normally get to us. Now all of a sudden I feel myself reacting. Again, that's another sign that you could be dealing with some type of acute stress or burnout. Physical or emotional fatigue, right? So not just feeling it within your body, but also feeling it mentally, where you feel like you just don't have the capacity to really give anything, to plan, to think, right? And I'll give you guys full disclosure here and myself, because these same things that I'm encouraging for you are the same things that I use for myself in keeping a pulse on where I am. And so for me, in the month of June, right, where we're really at the peak of dealing with COVID, and then we had all of the protests and social unrest and brutality happening within our communities, there was a moment where I could not focus on anything. I mean, I would go to meetings and I would be spacing out. It was difficult for me to sit at my desk and write or read or really get anything accomplished. And I had to really take a moment for myself to back away from work, took a couple of days off just to get myself together, right? And that's something that I noticed immediately. And you'll see that, right, with other feelings like being, and for me, it was not being able to concentrate. I was extremely sad, right? So there were days where, you know, just again, giving you guys full disclosure, where I felt like I was crying for days on end, right? And just felt like I couldn't get resolved. And I realized at that moment, again, that I was dealing with my own stress and burnout in that moment. And so again, decreased productivity, right? You're seeing changes in your sleeping habits, right? If you're waking up in the middle of the night, you're not able to get a full night's sleep, or you're not able to go to bed to fall asleep, right? You're feeling tightness in your body, an increased anxiety, more feelings of depression or hopelessness. These are all signs that you're dealing with some acute stress or burnout, and that it's time for an intervention. Again, going into frequent loss or concentration and forgetfulness, dietary changes. And this is really important too, and something that we often can overlook. If you start realizing that certain foods that you normally eat are now agitating your stomach, right? And you're saying, oh man, I'm having a stomach ache, or oh my goodness, I'm feeling bloated, or, you know, TMI, I'm having a little bit of gas and I normally don't have gas from eating this type of food. These are all signs that your body is dealing with some stress, right? Something as small as I normally have milk, or I normally eat cheese, or these things that are usually a part of my normal diet and I don't have an issue. Now this is a part of your diet and you're seeing some stomach disturbance or digestional issues. That's a sign that you could be dealing with stress, because it can internalize in the body. If you're getting sick more often, more frequently, again, another sign of stress, right? There is a science behind this. There's literally a medical science behind how our body reacts to stress. And these are signs. And then the last piece in that is if you find yourself not really wanting to be involved with your family or your friends, or just wanting to be alone all of the time, right? Decreased social interaction, right? Where you don't want to connect. Again, that's another sign that you could be dealing with burnout or acute stress. And so we're going to take a quick moment to answer another question that someone may have here. Okay, so are there official policies in place to reference when advocating for leave mental health days due to burnout and acute stress during COVID? Yes. So if you are a full-time employee, okay, you will, and a full-time employee, meaning you have health insurance through your job. Okay, now this is unfortunate because this is usually a privilege that is only granted to people who are full-time employees who are getting paid health insurance through their organizations. Now, as a full-time employee, you will have access to FMLA. FMLA will cover mental health concerns, right? If you happen to be dealing with really extreme anxiety or depression, those are all things that are worked out with your medical doctor. And you do not have to, with your doctor's permission, and you're working through your HR, disclose to your job what some of those mental health concerns are, or what some of those physical health concerns are, right? That is something that you're working through with your doctor and through your HR, and you will have policy in place. That is what FMLA is for you to be able to take short-term leave from your organization or from your job because you're dealing with a health issue. And that health issue, again, is not just about physical health. The health issue can be that you are dealing with some mental health concerns. And if you are having a issue where now your mental health, your anxiety, or your depression is now intervening in your everyday life occurrences and being able to fulfill your job, that is absolutely a reason for you to go to your primary healthcare doctor and talk to them about what of some of these experiences are, and working it through your HR to be able to utilize your FMLA. That's a great question. That's a great question. So thank you for that. Now, in terms of employees who are not full-time or who may be contracted, that can be a little bit more difficult because there's not always going to be those same protections in place that full-time employees have. However, if you do have a supervisor, right, that you trust, that you feel cares about your well-being, I would absolutely encourage you to have a conversation with your supervisor directly, a private conversation as well, right? Asking that conversation is private and that they can protect your personal things that you may be dealing with. But talking to your supervisor about really trying to work through some of that hardship, whether that's, and I've seen this before with other supervisors who may modify a schedule, right? Maybe if you're someone who has to be in the field, you can have a supervisor that can set things up for you to work from home a little bit more, right? Just really trying to work with a supervisor to be flexible. And if you are a supervisor that's watching this presentation, really thinking about the well-being of your employees and how being flexible with them during this time, especially with everything that we're all dealing with, is really going to make for great capacity and community building on our teams, right? And really contribute to a healthier team. So trying to be flexible where you can, and where you can kind of bend on some of the ways that you would normally go about doing your job, and really trying to support your employees. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Let's keep going. And so now we're going to take some of these things that we saw in that checklist, and we're going to talk about how can I start intervening on my own right now to deal with some of these things that I'm going through. So how do we tackle feelings of depression, hopelessness, and social isolation? And so the first piece in that is being able to identify a safe space to share your feelings and emotions with someone. Now, for those of you who are still working from home, right, and this can be a little bit nuanced because not all of us have a big, huge house and a basement and a separate room, right? You may just be living in apartment, in an efficiency apartment with your partner, right, or a two-bedroom with your kids, right? And you may say, I don't really have a space where I can go to talk with someone. Take those phone calls outside, right? Now, you might need to go super early in the morning because it's so hot out right now, you might melt out there. But before the weather got crazy, right, is saying, let me just take this phone call in my car. Let me take this phone call on a walk, right? So I can step away from my home and have a moment to talk openly and liberally with someone. Whether, again, that's a healthcare professional, a counselor, or a therapist, which we're going to talk about in a second, or whether that's talking to a spiritual advisor or a friend or someone else that you trust, that you can share some of the hardships that you may be experiencing right now. We all need that space. And so being vigilant about trying to commit yourself to finding where that space is going to be for you. For me, it's definitely walks, right? Sometimes now I even take some of my Zoom meetings on the phone as opposed to using the video, so that I can just get up and moving and get out of sitting in the same space all day. The next piece in this, for those of you who may have insurance or you're a full-time employee, many insurance providers right now are offering free telehealth counseling services. I know for sure Aetna is one of them, and I believe Blue Cross Blue Shields is another, where you can't go into the office for the counseling session, but you can do a telehealth, which means I can call in or I can do a Zoom in. Many insurance providers are offering free telehealth counseling services, so looking into that. For those of you who do not have insurance or can't afford counseling, checking out different resources that offer either pro bono or sliding scale counseling options, right? So Open Counseling, I know, is one website that I know people have used to be able to find affordable counseling that may be too expensive with your copay, or maybe you don't have insurance and you're paying out of pocket, but you still do need the mental health care. There are people out here who offer these services in times like these, and for people who really need the help. And so for those of you who are state employees, Health Advocate is your internal employee assistance program. So that's what an EAP stands for, Employee Assistance Program. And through most employee assistance programs, they offer you 5 counseling sessions for free, usually out the gate, right? So utilizing those resources and getting connected with a professional if you need it. The other piece and ways that we can really tackle these feelings of depression and hopelessness and social isolation is really starting to get involved in some of these writing exercises to release emotions, right? So whether that's just journaling and saying, you know what, I hate everything today, which I do, right? I hate everything today, and everyone's annoying, right? But I also have another journal. So I have my journal that I just kind of dump my feelings in just to let it go, right? Because I have to release it. But I also have a separate journal where after I'm done dumping things, I write things that I'm actually grateful for, right? Something positive, or I do affirmations, right? And again, I know that sounds super hippie and kumbaya, but it works, guys. It works. There's science behind this stuff, okay? I'm telling you, it will really help. So making a gratitude list, writing things down that you're grateful for and the things that are going well in your life are small steps that you can take to really elevate and boost your mood. The other piece in this, if you're not comfortable doing the counseling, maybe you're not comfortable doing the writing exercises or journaling or making a gratitude list, right? Looking for online communities and peer groups. And honestly, guys, like there are so many groups that you can find on Facebook right now. I mean, you can find a Facebook group for just about everything, from being a single parent to liking Pokemon, whatever your thing is, right? Connecting with other people like-minded who may be dealing with a similar issue that you're dealing with, or who maybe share interests that you share, so that you can engage with other people and take your mind off some of the hardships that you may be dealing with. But at the end of the day, what's most important in this is that all of us as individuals need support and need help through the different things that we experience in our professional and our personal life. And so now the next piece, and what we can be doing to tackle this emotional, physical fatigue and sleep deprivation. This is a huge one, okay? And everything starts with how we are resting and taking care of our bodies, right? And so the first piece in this that can be really helpful in helping you recharge and deal with some of your physical and emotional fatigue is really reducing screen time during the day when you can, and avoid screen time 1 hour before sleep. And so what do I mean by reducing screen time? Now, first and foremost, for a lot of us, like we're doing right now, we're virtually meeting with each other, okay? Screen time is screen time. So whether we're on the computer, doing our Zoom meetings, reading emails, reading an article, or whether we're on our cell phones, sliding through, looking at social media and Facebook, we have increased the amount of time that our eyes are glued to some type of device. And that can really make you exhausted and contribute to your overall fatigue. What we can do is saying, all right, I'm only going to do social, since I have to be on Zoom all day for my meetings, or have to be in front of my computer, I'm going to kind of reduce the amount of time I'm going to spend on Facebook or social media, right? Because your eyes get tired, your mind can get tired from constantly having to read, reducing that time, and then saying an hour before sleep, no screen time. Right? I know that's so hard because I have my habits too, where, you know, sometimes you just scroll while you're in the bed, right? But that can really, again, it can really, really, really deter you getting a good night's rest. The other piece in this is being able to develop a bedtime and a wake up routine. This is something that's helped me tremendously. Finding something that works for you that helps you unwind before bed. So again, that's turning that phone off, putting it away and saying, you know what, I'm gonna move away from the emails, the text messages and social media, and I'm gonna do something that helps me relax. My thing to help me unwind in the evening is stretching and listening to gospel music. I know other people who their routine is reading a book right before bed to help them get sleepy. I know other people who it might be doing some type of meditation or having tea, right? Chamomile tea, or burning incense or an oil, something that just helps you relax. Kind of almost similar for those of you who have children, and you'll know when you did their bedtime routine, there was a routine that you did, right? Structure that helps you get on point. Like, nope, the kid knows when the milk comes out in the book, they know the routine, it's time to go to bed. You have to do the same thing for yourself, right? When that tea starts, you start brewing that tea, or you start doing that stretching, that's your body's response that it's time for sleep. It's time for us to unwind. And then the other piece in this is starting your day with positive thoughts and good intentions. And we're going to talk about this in a quick second. But right now, the 24-hour news cycle it will stress you out, right? Every time you open Facebook or you look at the news or CNN or Fox or whatever, literally everything's telling you we're all going to die tomorrow. Okay. I mean, it really stresses your mind out that way. And think about that. The first moments that we open our eyes and we wake up, we're ingesting negativity. We don't need that. The first things that we should do in the morning is set intentions, say something positive to ourselves, again, engage with our spirituality, or just have a quiet moment to settle yourself in before you start your day. Really setting a routine, creating a good sleeping environment for you, right? Trying to keep your room as tidy as you can. It helps you get better rest. A dark room, right? Turning off some of those blue lights that we have that keep going, that can keep us up or wake us up. Again, these are things that we can do to enhance our sleep and our fatigue, or not being as fatigued. And then lastly, if you are experiencing persistent insomnia, you definitely should talk to your medical doctor about that, because rest is going to be imperative to you being well and taking care of your well-being. And so then going into tackling this anxiety and poor frustration tolerance, what can we do here? One of the first things that we can do is a nice breathing exercise. When we take in deep breaths, okay? Deep breaths into our body, pulling in that oxygen, it slows down our heart rate, right? And for those of you who deal with anxiety, right? And I'm not talking just clinical anxiety. I'm talking about the type of anxiety where we say, oh, I just worry a lot, right? Or, oh, I just can get really hung up on having all the details, right? Those are some feelings of anxiousness, right? So how can we start getting ourselves to feel a little bit more calm? Doing breathing exercises. For those of you who have an Apple Watch or a Droid watch, right? There are features in this watch where you can do a 60-second breathing exercise, right? Where it buzzes and vibrates to help you breathe in and breathe out. All it takes is 60 seconds to do a breathing exercise, and something like your smartwatch can help you do that. There's tons of exercises on YouTube. Again, these are free resources, right? Try not to spend the money and get what you can. The same with these meditation and mindfulness apps. These are different apps that you can use that are free, that help you with meditation, taking quiet time, learning how to just turn your brain off and take a moment, or paid apps like Headspace and Oak. I do use Headspace, which I do like a lot, and it can be a little bit pricey. I think it's maybe about $65 for the whole year. But if you're thinking about this as something that you do regularly, what's $6 a month for your mental health? Not that much, right? And the bigger schemes of things. I mean, we can probably spend $60 on shoes or food or, you know, whatever else we like to buy. Taking that same money and putting it back into ourselves and our well-being, it's worth it. The next piece of this is physical activity, all right? Now, I want you guys to know when we're talking about physical activity, I'm not saying that everyone needs to go do CrossFit and do 100 push-ups and sit-ups and I need you to run 7 miles. No, no, no. I am simply saying that what your body needs is movement. Leisurely walks count. Early in the morning, that's my new favorite thing. I got into walking once we started quarantining, right? Because I just needed to get out of the house, and it became a thing for me. Just small walks, whether it's a 5-minute walk, a 10-minute walk, a mile, whatever you can do. Just trying to get engaged and moving your body is going to be great for your anxiety and for dealing with frustration. And then lastly, using that peer support to really get help when you need it, talking to your friends, talking to your family, right? Dealing with some of the hardships, which I know for a lot of you, I feel for all of you who are parents and have been dealing with your children at home. Oh my goodness, bless you all, seriously, because I'm barely keeping my dog alive right now, okay? No, don't call PETA on me. My dog is very healthy and he gets lots of food and treats, but I'm just saying for those of you who have kids at home, it is very, very, very difficult, the stressors that you're dealing with in managing not only your own professional life, your personal feelings, your anxiety, but kids feel anxiety too, right? And so the changing environments that they've been dealing with school, we think like, oh, these kids, they don't care, nothing bothers them. These kids are showing effects of dealing with the stress and anxiety and uncertainty of what's been happening in society. They feel that as well. And so now you're managing little people and their feelings, and that is a lot. So you need support. Definitely, we all need support, and especially those of you who are managing your children right now at home during these times, and even thinking about what the school year is going to look like in the fall. I don't have kids, but that secondhand stresses me out, thinking about the stressor that brings, and thinking about school this upcoming year. So the other piece in this, how do we tackle this poor diet, illness and muscle tension, right? If you're getting sick often, if your body is not feeling well, like, right, what are things that we can do to kind of help mitigate some of that stuff? And the first piece in this, I know you're not going to like to hear this, I didn't either, limiting sugar and caffeine when you can, okay? Buying what your body needs versus what your mind wants. Now, this is coming from the person who ate all the quarantine snacks the first month, okay? You know how we all ran out to the store and we were getting everything and buying all the stuff? Y'all, I literally ate all the quarantine snacks in the first month, and I was like, okay, something needs to change here, right? Now I realized it was a stress eater, because I'm a stress eater. For some of you who are the same way, right? You're not feeling that great, you're feeling kind of funky. Where's the cupcake, right? Where's the whatever? I want it because it's gonna make me feel better. Actually, when we start doing these things in excess, it only exasperates those negative feelings and that mood, right? Because our physical body, we're not processing good foods. And so if we're not eating wholesome foods, less processed foods, these are things that our body is also not going to be able to deal well with, right? Adding to the stressors. So really trying to, if it's not in the house, you won't eat it, right? That's my philosophy. Anyone that comes to my house, which has been a long time since no one's coming to people's houses lately, but if you did just stop by, you would see that I am not the snack house, right? So you're not going to find all the chips and the dips and all this and that, but I will give you a banana or an apple if you're looking for that, right? So thinking about being mindful of what you bring in the house. Spending time outside safely with social distancing, of course, making sure that we're taking care. There's so many free options that we can engage in right here in Delaware, going to White Clay Creek, Brandywine Creek, walking your neighborhood, or just sitting outside whenever you can. Being outside, getting a little bit of sun and fresh air does a wonder for your mental and physical health. Trying natural relaxers, right? Whether that's essential oils like lavender, calming candles, chamomile tea, things that smell nice and bring you a sense of calm. And then identifying and scheduling a time to eat, stretch, and work out. All of them, or one of them, or two of them, whatever the case may be. But often with how hectic our schedules can be, right? We can lose sight of, oh, I skipped lunch, or I skipped breakfast, or I didn't have time to eat, or I didn't have time to work out. The same way that you can show up for your coworkers, your clients, your kids, and getting people to their appointments, and showing up for the meeting you have with your boss, and so on and so forth, you can do that same thing for yourself. Make an appointment, right? And so for me, now what I do, I put unless it's absolutely an emergency, I put things like my lunch on my calendar. So from 12 to 12:45, I don't take any meetings. And so when people say, can you meet at 12? I don't say, yes, I'm available. I say, no, I have an engagement at that time. They don't need to know the engagement is with myself, right? But that's me prioritizing what I need and making sure that we're getting rest. And so doing that for yourself as well. And so one of these things that we have to do, right, is being able to provide self-care to ourselves in the professional realm, but also in our personal life. And these things can look a little bit different. Each area requires distinct and separate focus and practices, right? So there are things that we will need for self-care in our jobs, but there are things that we need for self-care in our personal life. If we're not tending to both, making boundaries for both, one can affect the other. So if you're not taking care of your personal self-care, right, when you're out of work, if you're not taking care at home, that can seep into your job, right? That can seep into the way that you show up for your work or your clients or for your organization. And the same with professional care, it's professional self-care. If we're not setting the boundaries and taking care of ourselves in our workspace, those things can seep into our personal life, right? And I've been there before where I've worked in a toxic work environment and I wasn't really taking care of myself in this work environment. And now at the time, my partner was the one who carried the brunt of all of my frustration, right? Because I would come home on the weekends, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm talking about my job that I don't like, right? And so now we have this bleeding and this meshing of one into the other because we're not tending to both. And so our professional self-care is this process of purposeful engagement and practices that promote effective and appropriate use of the self in the professional role, where our personal self-care is a process of purposeful engagement and practices that promote holistic health and well-being of the self. And so we'll jump into what that can look like in the professional life. So for professional self-care, the biggest piece that we can do to start taking care of ourselves within our jobs is thinking about our workload and time management. This is huge. Setting clear boundaries for what is work-related and what is non-work related, right? Really trying to, if you're on a vacation, okay, if you're taking a vacation, you do not need to be checking those emails. Don't check the emails. You're on vacation. Don't let the professional life bleed into the personal life, right? That's an example of that. Taking breaks throughout the workday, right? So this is whether, and I put on here this Pomodoro method. And if you guys haven't heard of the Pomodoro method, or it's called the tomato method, where you work for a certain amount of time, usually it's about for 25 or 30 minutes up to an hour, and every 25 minutes of work or 30 minutes of work, whatever you designate for yourself, you take a 5-minute break. You literally walk away, stand up from the computer, and I'm going to take a 5-minute break before I come back. That's going to help with your sustainability, right? Building in those breaks. We are not machines. We are not robots, right? And we cannot just go, 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 go. So we have to set these boundaries for ourselves of when we're working and when it's time to take a rest. Reserving work tasks, whether that's paperwork, emails, contacting a colleague, work hours only. Right now, you might have moments where you have projects that are coming up and I need to do a little more, I have to work on the weekend, or I need to work a little late. That's okay. Those are exceptions to the rule. But the rule is, if it's not during work hours, if I'm home with my family or my partner or with myself, you may not have any of the above. You could just be you. You are deserving of setting boundaries and saying, this is my time or my family's time or my partner's time. I will get to this email tomorrow morning when I'm back on the clock, right? So setting boundaries with your team and yourself. If that means you need to delete the email off your phone when you're on vacation, right? Like taking the app off the phone. If that means you need to put up away emails, like, right? So for myself, I was in a really intense training program for the entire, for most of July and the latter part of June. And so, but the emails were still flying through. So what I did, a small thing, I put up an away message and I said, hello, I am in an intense training program from this date to this date. I will not be able to respond to your emails immediately. I will get to them as soon as I can. That's a small way that you can set a boundary for yourself. Prioritize your tasks based on what is urgent, important, to not urgent or important. So usually the urgent things are the things that we need to get done right now because it's going to matter for tomorrow, right? The important things are, okay, the emails that are coming through may not be urgent, but someone needs a response, but do they need the response right in that exact moment? Probably not. I can wait that out a little bit longer. Not urgent would be Facebook. Facebook is not important at work. And you know, with Facebook, you guys, you'll get on there before you know it, you've been scrolling for 45 minutes and you're like, oh my goodness, what just happened? I got sucked into the abyss. And that's what social media will do for you. Not urgent, so it doesn't need to be a focal point for work. And then, yes, or not urgent or important. Being attentive to your reactions at work. If you need a break, that's okay, right? So how I told you earlier, when I was having a hard time in the early part of June, I knew I needed to take a couple of days to get myself back together. And I had to say to myself, it's okay that you need this time, right? A lot of people are struggling and you're not alone. So take what you need to be well. If you're not as productive as you used to be, that is okay too. Guys, we are going through a whole pandemic right now while we're doing our jobs. So for anyone to say it's not that serious, it's not that tough on you, that is not the truth, because we are all struggling through this. Use your sick days or mental health days as you need them. That's what they're there for. Giving and receiving professional and social support. And so if you're a supervisor, that's checking in with your employees. weekly. Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? That's checking in with your staff. Hey, is there anything that I can do to help? How are you feeling, right? Just creating space for support. And this is also, if you're the supervisee, is self-advocating and being honest with your supervisor about what you need. My mother always says this: a closed mouth doesn't get fed, right? You can't expect people to read your mind. So if you're having a tough time, you got to speak up for yourself. No one's going to advocate best for you like you, right? So being able to speak up about if you're having a difficult time with your job or with your workload. Revitalization and generation of energy, like, right? So how do we get back going into this? These are small things like trying to create a pleasant workspace, right? Put little cards. I'll show you mine right here on my desk. It sits in this little thing, right? Oh, you can't see it. Okay. Well, anyways, I'll tell you what it says because you can't see it. But the card says, "You are wildly capable," right? And I change them out. I have different little cards that I put up on my desk just to remind me of who I am and the fact that I'm going to be okay. Little small things in your workspace, whether it's a picture of your family, whether it's an inspirational quote, whether it's your Bible, whatever motivates you and gives you some type of inspiration, put those things around you in your work environment. And if you're someone that's not at a desk, maybe it's wearing a bracelet that can remind you of something, right? Maybe it's carrying something in your wallet or your back pocket, whatever you need to do. And revisiting those reminders throughout your day can be really helpful towards taking care of yourself in the workplace. For personal self-care here, now this is where now you're going to really start being aware of your coping strategies. So we should be trying to do something every day to maintain our wellness and to take care of ourselves, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's praying, whether that's stretching, whether that's listening to a song that we really like. Every day we should do something to help with our coping strategies and being aware of ourselves. Establishing a news diet. Now, in this time, again, when the stress levels are high and there's so much calamity and chaos and negativity in the world, really trying to reduce the amount of news consumption. I usually like to say, whatever you need to know about what's going on in the world, you can get in 30 minutes to an hour. One newscast, okay? Because they repeat the same thing all day, every day anyways. There's no need for you to watch it over and over again, right? One little dose, read your newspaper or watch your CNN or watch your MSN, whatever it is that you watch, get your dose, turn it off. That's enough, right? So we can monitor how our stress response to the news. Intentionally making time for joy. And so again, that's listening to your favorite album, enjoying a treat in moderation, of course, reading or watching mindless TV, right? I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I do like a little bit of ratchet TV. I'm ashamed, but I'm not ashamed, but I am, but I'm not. So I just do it in small doses. It's entertaining, it's funny for me, like, right? It's something that I don't have to think about, real life and everything that's going on, because all this stuff is scripted anyways. It's not really reality. It's fake reality. But it's still entertaining. And then extend yourself grace and patience, right? So be easy on yourself. Give yourself time to establish your routine and your new norm, right? As you get into things. Again, you're not a robot, so it takes time to adjust to some of these differences and putting these new strategies and routines into place. And so kind of bringing this all really together here and this overall stress management, everything that we've been talking about together, doing your best to stay positive or find the silver lining. As bad as things can get, right? There's still something that we can find, even when we're not really tied to it, that is positive about what we're going through, right? Learning to divert our attention from things that are outside of our control, right? So if we cannot change it, there's no sense in putting our energy into it, right? Because that just becomes this hamster wheel that we're jumping on. Learning to release your emotions in healthy ways, right? And so again, just being able to process, journal, sing, read, however you need to engage to release those emotions is what we do to really manage our stress. Getting in the habit of engaging in relaxation techniques that we mentioned and talked about earlier, right? All of those things, from whether it's therapy to reading to doing things that we find enjoyable, really employing some of those techniques to get us going. setting appropriate boundaries, and being okay with saying no sometimes. I know right now during this time, a lot of us are getting pulled in a lot of different ways, right? But we have to find the space to say, I can't do everything. I can't occupy every single lane. But what is the lane I can occupy? And how do I say no to the rest of that stuff, right? I just don't have the bandwidth for it now. That is okay. And that's going to help you manage that stress. Making time, like we've been reiterating throughout this presentation, for the things that bring you joy, and making time for yourself. Taking care of everything about you, your mind, your body, your spirit, really focusing on how do I give my time and energy to making sure that I'm okay and making sure that I'm taking care of my well-being. Really trying to limit the self-medication, which is an avoidance strategy. And so self-medication would be, we're having a little bit too many drinks. We're having a little bit too many drugs, okay? No judgment, but I want you all to be well and healthy, right? And how might we be using some of these things that we, or self-medicating with food, right? We all have our vice and things that we can do to pull away from some hard feelings and emotions that we may be having. Things in moderation is key, but when we start doing it excessively, that's when it's time to start thinking about that intervention. And then seeking support and help whenever you need it. When we pull these things all together, guys, this is how we're really going to start managing our stress, really engaging in that resiliency, right? And getting over these hardships and taking care of ourselves in our personal life and in our professional life. And when we're doing all of these things together, it makes us better employees, it makes us better community members, it makes us better parents, partners, and individuals as a whole. And so I hope this was useful for you guys and you were able to take some great things away from this. I will take a moment just to see if there's any questions in the chat before we wrap things up. Okay, well, that is all that we have for now. I would like to thank you guys so much for your time and taking a moment to spend this hour with us. I would like to thank AmeriCorps for bringing me out. It's always my pleasure. And if any of you would like to contact me in the future or have concerns or questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you guys and take care.